Hello everyone, welcome to today's show. We have a great one for you as always, because on the show we have joining us Edward Zhang. He's going to be talking about some of the things going on with the coronavirus, what's going on with the WHO, why are they freezing funds for that? I thought that was important. We will tell you. We'll talk about what Trump's been doing on the phone with business executives calling for more testing. And there's some demonstrators in Michigan in their cars protesting the governor's social distancing orders. We'll be talking a little bit about them. Also, we will be talking about the incredible 2020 content generator that is this wonderful primary that I love so much. It's now come to obviously an end, but there are still so many things to talk about. Edward, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it. Hope your quarantine has been going well.
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, you are our first quarantine period guest, I believe. So there is that.
I'm honored to have the privilege.
Yeah. All right. So this first off, we're starting with the coronavirus. I do forget because I do believe we had you on the show like just at the beginning of the quarantine. And I don't remember what you said, but I do remember you thinking like it's not going to be that big of a deal. Like, what is your reaction to basically just out front how the coronavirus handling of it has been so far?
Well, I thought I tried to strike an optimistic tone in the sense that I thought our response would be better. I think when it comes to the testing, then and now things have gotten better. When it comes to the relief bill, we've gotten more stimulus than I actually expected myself, to be honest. But then again, the downturn has been a lot worse than I expected too.
Yeah, and I mean, I hear a lot of people talking about like this whole thing to do with like people losing jobs. Obviously, it's an incredibly bad situation. But what do you think the rebound for the economy will be like realistically when this thing ends? Because obviously, there's going to be people who need the money now. So many Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. They need that money like as soon as they could possibly get it. But what do you think there will be a resurgence in jobs, and do you think the economy will be back to normal for most people when this thing ends? Like, how easily will be people who have been kicked out of the economy, kicked out of the workforce, how easily do you think they will be reintegrated into the workforce?
It's a really tough question, right? I think it entirely depends on, how well this virus really goes away. Because even if we do get a handle on it, even if things do reopen, there are certain areas of the economy, if we like with what some of these countries are doing, like South Korea and Germany, they're aiming to reopen. South Korea is sort of open again, but even when they're open, it's always at half capacity versus at full capacity, right? Like people are still not going to be allowed to go to restaurants, right? What we really need, what I really hope at least, is that we get a vaccine. Until then, I think we're going to be feeling the effects of this virus for quite a while.
Yeah, and the timeline for that is, I mean, at least as the curve flattens, like you got to make sure the curve is completely flat as a pancake before you even think about getting started again. Really, that's the kind of the truth of the matter. But what do you make of like this new reporting here out that is saying all about how Trump he's obviously cut funding from the WHO because of criticizing of China, and of course there is new reporting you should probably take with a bit of a grain of salt from Fox News, saying that sources tell them that this originated in a Wuhan laboratory, not as we've hearing with the pangolins and the wet markets. Like it originated in a laboratory, and this really all seems to be part of a plot. Really, the way I see it is to just kind of pass as much blame possible on the new menace in Asia. China. So, like, do you think there's any truth to what I'm saying here?
Well, I think there are a lot of issues with the World Health Organization, and I think Trump's move to defund it was long overdue. You see, with the World Health Organization, we're giving them a lot of money, right? And we have this expectation that there'll be this apolitical international organization which does its best to prevent epidemics, right, and to ensure that every country is treated the same as an international organization. But what we're seeing right now is that China is exerting a lot of influence over this organization. I don't even think the World Health Organization, in fact, recognizes Taiwan as an independent and sovereign nation. They didn't give them the same information. They don't really communicate with them very effectively. And in the information they give to other countries, they actually list Taiwan, the infected numbers from Taiwan, with the infected numbers from China. Now, that's going to be really confusing. It's the way they've organized everything. It's really bad. I'm sure you saw the video on Twitter, actually. There was this reporter from what news organization they represent. I don't really remember. But she repeatedly asked a World Health Organization sort of doctor about Taiwan. And he just ignored her pretty much. And he just pretended that Taiwan didn't exist. So there's issues with that. The director himself, Tedros, he's also pretty corrupt. And I encourage anyone listening right now to look up what he did when his own country, Ethiopia, experienced cholera outbreaks.
Mm-hmm. I don't really know too much about that guy, but I do know I'm looking up here one of our favorite websites on the right, one of the most crazy websites on the right, The Federalist, talking about this video to find this video. And I think I did see this was a bit ago, actually. It's from March 28th. But like in terms of like that, like that's obviously political games that they're playing, which is not good. Like you never really want to see that. But
yep.
I mean, I don't see how you can make a case like that's leading them to mishandle the virus in some way, shape, or form. I don't see how you can really draw that correlation.
Well, this sort of pandering to the Chinese government and this sort of covering up the truth and these political games, it sort of suggests to me that the World Health Organization, they aren't really appropriating their resources efficiently. So it raises the question, why should the United States morally, right, and pragmatically support the World Health Organization when they're giving out misinformation and politicizing an epidemic?
So other than the fact that, like, I don't think this was like did they start not recognizing Taiwan right after, or they still don't recognize Taiwan. Right? Like, I don't think this. I think like them being bad about Taiwan doesn't really have that much to do with like how they've been handling the virus, and they could be a pretty important resource to having the virus out there and taking better care of the world as a whole. Like, why hamstring them just because they're bad about like politics? Like, Taiwan's doing fine, China's doing fine. It's not like they're helping China cover up like a genocide of Taiwan or whatever. It's not like I'd see how it would be a little bit different if it was that circumstance, but I just don't see the need to take this drastic of an action.
Well, it's more than that, right? The reason why we would support the World Health Organization, right, is that this international organization would be honest about everything and it would hold everyone equally to account. Now, when it comes to the United States and China, the World Health Organization, they've dished out plenty of criticism to the United States, but they have actually refused to criticize China. And that's because China has exerted a lot of influence on the director himself and on the group. More so on the director than the U.S. probably. So I'll give you some examples, right? Mm-hmm. When China first announced that there was no direct human-to-human transmission, the World Health Organization, they just swallowed that up, right? Even very recently, it was revealed that internal Chinese documents, 6 days before that announcement was made, indicated that they knew that there was human-to-human transmission. In 2003, during the SARS outbreak, the World Health Organization was more than willing to criticize China for their misinformation and for their attempts to walk things slowly. But now the World Health Organization really is not holding China to account. We know that China lied, right? We have credible information, which leads us to believe that China was not being honest. So the World Health Organization should be honest and hold them to account.
Yeah, but
And they haven't.
I do what you're saying. So like, what I don't know if that's necessarily isn't. I don't really see how that could be their like. What could they do besides just saying these words to hold the Trump administration, or not the Trump, but to China over to account? Like, they don't really have power over China. We know China's a very authoritarian place. Like, I just don't like their role. I guess should be to provide good information about the virus. But I do get. I mean, it's what it seems like here to me is like that. Really, Trump is trying to kind of make China to blame for a lot of his, and China. I mean, I don't think China should be really considered as one. Like, I'm not trying to say here that China's good. Like, they obviously lied about their numbers. They obviously have way more than 3,000 fatalities. I'm like, come on, but it's definitely more than that. But I don't think that just because China lied about their numbers doesn't mean Trump should get a pass for his sky high numbers due to his frankly awful management of this virus.
I think China deserves more blame than many people think they deserve right now. Right? What the World Health Organization does by refusing to hold China to account for their misinformation is that they're lying to all of its other member states, and that includes the US. It's pretty hard to sort of organize a response to the coronavirus when you have the International Health Organization pretty much acting as a propaganda mouthpiece for the Chinese government. Now, I'm using some pretty harsh words here, but with what the World Health Organization did, let me give you an example. Right? When the United States, when President Trump made the executive order to stop all travel between China and the United States, the World Health Organization actually condemned that travel ban, right? And that was way back before this issue started exploding. Now, and China also criticized it, right? And now, if we look to today, we can see that call was very prudent. Most of the coronavirus cases in New York, at least, were from Europe, and same with other states.
But yeah. Well, a lot of them. So the ban was from China, but a lot of the states the cases came through from Europe.
Yeah, and the U.S. really failed. We dropped the ball on that. But keep in mind, the World Health Organization, they didn't really even notice this trend either. So not only are they ineffective,
yeah,
right, but they sort of parrot this propaganda and they push the Chinese narrative on these issues. With this criticism on the travel ban, after that, right, the World Health Organization started recommending more strict travel restrictions, right? So it's just completely hypocritical to believe China over the United States on this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I really do have to take the kind of position that, I don't really believe either of them. I think they're both doing a bad job, kind of. So, yeah, that's just my kind of view of it. But I do want to play for you this clip that Edward mentioned before with this journalist doing an interview about Taiwan and the membership of the WHO.
Taiwan's membership.
She's asking, will the WHO consider Taiwan's membership? And then he kind of pauses.
Hello?
I'm sorry, I can't hear. I couldn't hear your question.
Okay, yeah. Let me repeat the question.
No, that's okay. Let's move to another one then.
Right, because I'm actually curious on talking about Taiwan as well, on Taiwan's case.
Oh, there he goes. He's gone. So he says pretty much, let's move on to another question. It's that was quite a move there. Yeah, so that is definitely one of the biggest. So pretty much what they're trying to say is here, he's saying they're busy. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says we're also working to address polio, measles, malaria, Ebola, HIV, tuberculosis.